What's going on, everybody? This is First and 10.
First and 10.
First and 10 podcast. That's right. We are back for your Week 6 enjoyment. We are sitting here on October 11th of 2016, pre-Week 6. My name, Nick Giamalva. The man sitting across from me.
I am Ray Berlett. Oh, no, I'm not Ray Berlett.
No, he's not. Listen, Ray Berlett
is on the IR.
He's on the IR.
Actually, what happened was I came off the IR, and we had to free up a position.
It took a lot of finagling on the roster, but we got him back in.
I'm just trying to get a roster spot.
Brad Pierson is back. He's better than ever. Yeah, maybe. But Ray actually is out. He's out sick tonight. He texted me today. I said, you know what? You went from doubtful to out. That's okay. We'll give him 1 week off.
He was scared. He wanted to get a little bit of a report on me, I think.
Maybe a little bit. He wanted to hear you.
See my speed was like. I understand.
It's good.
I understand. Yeah.
It's still okay. So yeah, Brad, we're really happy you're back. Can't wait to hear what everything that we have to go over this week, which is of course our Week 6.
I have a lot of catching up to do.
Ketchup, mustard.
Mostly ketchup, though.
I'm gonna relish this.
Yes.
Oh boy. So yeah, we're gonna go over our first podcast. We're gonna do the news and the injuries. We're gonna go over.
Oh, news. Okay.
Yep, news. While we booze. We're gonna go over some of the games from last week. We're gonna go over some surprises from last week, and then we're gonna get into some of the listener questions. You can follow us on Twitter. The podcast is at First and 10 Podcast. I am at GMLVA15. That's for Nick. You can follow Ray at First and 10 Ray. Brad, you should be getting...
I'm old school. I'm P.O. Box 181 in Deer Creek. Send postcards, please.
You should not give people... This is going out across all internets.
It's fine.
Okay, it's fine. It's fine. You're right. You can follow us on Facebook. Go to the search bar. Type in at First and 10 Podcast, all one word. If you want to know up-to-date injuries, news, information, like us on Facebook. I post quite a bit on there. I try to get news out as fast as I possibly can. And so go like us on Facebook. And then you can always email us firstand10podcast@gmail.com. So now that you know all of the ways that you can get a hold of us, we're going to get into the news and injuries following Week 5 going into Week 6. We're going to move through these pretty quickly because we do want to spend some time on the games from last week. It's a little bit different segment than we've done the last couple times in the podcast. We want to make it a little bit more relevant for the listener, and so we're gonna move through these pretty quickly. Brad, are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. So for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who played Monday night against the Carolina Panthers,
brutal game. Charles
Sims was sent to the injured reserve. He went to the IR, probably out for the season. He could come back very, very late into the season, but probably unlikely. Doug Martin should be back for Week 6. Tampa Bay is on a bye this week, or after Week 6. For Week 7. Tampa Bay is on a bye this week, but they expect Doug Martin to come back unless he has some sort of setback. You can expect him back for Week 7. If you're desperate in a PPR league, Jaquiz Rogers is actually not a bad pickup.
What did he do? Did he do anything last night?
35 touches.
Oh, wow.
35 touches.
How many catches?
I want to say he ran it 29. He probably had 5 or 6 catches.
Because he'll be catching the ball.
Yeah, I mean, he's a PPR option. He's going to fill in the Sims role, probably not quite as talented as Sims.
He'll still get his opportunities.
Cutter had him when he was in Atlanta. He liked him. As soon as the Bears dropped him, which was obviously, the Bears pulling great moves all year long, drop good veteran running back.
They have a good running back now.
Yeah, well,
the rookie's good.
Yeah. But anyways, if you PPR option, if you're desperate, Jaquiz Rogers not a terrible pickup. Baltimore fired offensive coordinator Mark Trestman on Monday.
Speaking of the Bears offense.
Oh, speaking of the Bears. Marty Mornhinweg is going to take over. You can expect that offense is going to change up a little bit. They've already said they wanted to go with the run a little bit more. They're impressed with what Terrence West has done. They're excited about Kenneth Dixon coming back off of his injury. So, expect a little bit of a change in Baltimore, possibly leaning a little bit more run heavy, but it's going to be a feeling out process for the first couple of weeks to see what he wants to do. Eddie Lacy, ankle injury. He says he's fine.
He's good.
Coach McCarthy says it's not serious. Maybe this week he's dialed back a little bit, but overall, I don't think it's gonna be too heavy. Keeping up kind of with the Packers, Jared Cook is out 4 to 6 weeks. You can see Richard Rodgers filling that role in his absence. Randall Cobb got banged up.
Thought he was
left
dead.
with he said he was scared.
Thought he was dead.
He said he was scared, but actually he's fine.
Yep, he's fine.
So you can probably expect him to play. Jeremy Hill left with a shoulder injury. That's why you saw a lot of Giovanni Bernard, but they're saying it's very minor. Marvin Lewis came out and said not overly concerned about it. But with a shoulder injury, could it be re-aggravated early in a game? Does he land on it wrong? Is this going to be a Giovanni Bernard game anyways due to the fact they're playing the Patriots and maybe behind by quite a few points? Who knows? Speaking of the Patriots, Chris Hogan left with a concussion. He went into concussion protocol, left the game, and returned at the end of the game. He's going to be okay. Cody Kessler, Browns quarterback, still a little bit banged up. Shoulder's still bothering him. Josh McCown is still going to be out for maybe a week or two. Charlie Whitehurst was cut today. They brought up somebody from the practice squad.
Charlie.
So a lot of questions there in Cleveland. Probably an offense you kind of want to stay away from in fantasy. I mean, Terrell Pryor. Okay, they're probably going to run lean run heavy. So, maybe Isaiah Crowell, maybe Duke Johnson. We'll get into that a little bit later. Speaking of the Browns, Gary Barnidge also left with an ankle injury. I think he's going to be okay, but just one of those guys. If there is an injury on a guy that's projected as a top 10 tight end, we need to let you know about it. Carson Palmer was cleared today from concussion protocol. He'll return to practice. He is expected to play. Same with Cam Newton. They're very happy with how he's progressing. They have a game this week, then they have a bye. So keep an eye on him just in case. I mean, they're 1-4. They started off very poorly. They may decide to hold him out for one more week and then the bye. Who knows? Keep your eye on that. Jonathan Stewart's the same. Should be back for this week, but you never know with the slow start. They may hold him out for one more. Trying to think. I think that's... did I skip over anybody? That's the majority of the people. So we're going to take a small break. We went through that kind of quickly, but we do want to kind of go over the games from last week. If there were some major injuries in the games, we'll get to them there. We went over the majority of them. But hang on for just a second with us, and we'll be right back to talk about the results from last week's game. Brad, what do you think?
I try not to.
We'll be right back. Welcome back, Mace. Oh, you're not in on that. Mace.
Mace.
You remember Mace from like the late 1990s?
Maybe we should redo this.
No, we're not redoing this. All right, we are going to actually jump into a little bit different segment. So previously, we would give you our our great picks, our bad picks from last week's games. Picks. Mostly great picks.
All great picks.
Semi-great picks.
Not as good as great of picks.
Is that mediocre picks?
Okay picks.
Okay picks, okay. Okay picks. All right, instead of confusing you really badly, what we're going to do is we're going to go through the games from last week very quickly, and we're going to give you, a little bit of feedback on the games. And we think this may... it may help fantasy relevance for the listener a little bit more. That's kind of what we're here for. Instead of bragging about our own picks and our bad picks, we want to help other people as much as we possibly can. So we're going to do that in a second. Right before we do that, we are going to get into the Pick'em picks.
Pick'em.
And Brad Pierson, sitting across from me,
that's me,
won this week. He went 9-5. Ray took second at 8-6, and Nicole and I finished last at 7-7. So actually, really close. I mean, we were within 2-3 picks of each other. So for the year, Ray is still sitting in first at 45-32. I'm still in second, technically, at 39-38. Brad, you crept back. You crept back into it at 37-40. And Nicole is actually sitting at 25-20. But that's only after a couple of 2-3 weeks. So, we quickly, of course, wanted to update you on accuracy. It was a very, very rough week. More bad picks than good. A lot of really close ones within a point or two of projections. My accuracy rate this week was only at right around 39%. Ray's was at like 36.
Mine was at 0.
Yours was at 0. Inaccuracy, mine was at like 57. Ray's was at 52. So it was just it was a rough week. It's been a rough year. It's been really difficult. Both fantasy and actual NFL games. It's been a crapshoot all year. We've been saying it for the last 2-3 weeks, actually. So, that being said, let's get into some of these games from last week. The first game was the Thursday night game, which, as we talked about, turned out to be more of a preseason game. We had some decent picks here. Larry Fitzgerald, as we found out, was the go-to target. We figured he would be. Ray and I both took him as our overperformers. He was projected at 13, finished with 26. He was the target. He was the target for Drew Stanton all night. Obviously, not having Carson Palmer there was a bit of a situation. But you know what? Out of everything that happened in this game, one thing stood true, and that is David Johnson is probably a top 3. In fact, he is a top 3 running back in the NFL. This dude's unbelievable.
He's a horse.
He's a horse. He's their first through fourth down guy. Now that Chris Johnson's out for the rest of the year, that it's unbelievable. How strong this guy is, how good the running game looks in Arizona, and especially for a team that really needs a boost right now. They're getting Carson Palmer back this week. Huge boost for them. But look for David Johnson to just keep performing. I think he's matchup proof, don't you?
Oh, without a doubt.
Yeah.
Johnson's, you start him every week without a doubt. It doesn't matter who they're going up against. One thing about... Are we going to touch on the Niners as well?
We can. That's what we're here for.
Curley, do you see him continuing? It's 2 weeks in a row. He's had pretty good success. Now Kaepernick's coming in. What does that do to the offense?
I think it boosts Carlos Hyde. And I think it also
boost any defense they're playing against.
Maybe. We'll get into that more in our projections podcast. We'll move on to the next game. We got to kind of move quickly through these to make sure we get to the listener questions at the end. Next game was first game on Sunday, not in complete direct order. Texans at Vikings. I think the takeaway here is that the Vikings are unbelievably good.
They're the best team in the NFL.
Defense is amazing. You know what? DeAndre Hopkins actually played pretty well. He was projected at 16 and finished at 16. But, I mean, what I learned from this is I have Minnesota's defense in a league. They're on a bye this week. Guess what? I'm not dropping them.
Yeah.
I mean,
they're unbelievable.
They're putting up ridiculous points as a defense. It's looking right now that the Sam Bradford trade was genius.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they look unbelievable.
Adam Thielen, he's a blocking wide receiver
out of nowhere.
He's a blocking wide receiver. Monster game. The only disappointment in that game is Rudolph. But he's not going to have 16 touchdown catches at the end of the year. So
we'll get to that in a little bit. So we'll move on from that game. Next game was the Bears and the Colts. We'll just skip this game. No, I'm just kidding. Listen, a bright spot for the Bears. Jordan Howard looked really good. I think when Jeremy Langford comes back, I think he's lost his job.
What do you think about a quarterback?
I think that Brian Hoyer is now thrown for over 300 yards in 3 straight games. Jay Cutler's never done that in his career. I think Jay Cutler's in trouble. I think that Hoyer's he obviously made some mistakes throughout the game. I don't know what the deal is with Alshon Jeffrey. He was wide open on the last play of the game.
Yeah, but I've heard some different things about that. I mean, the view that they show of that, he could have already thrown the ball when he looked like he's
well, yeah. That's true. Listen, I think...
But one-on-one with your number one, that's probably where you should go with the ball.
T.Y. Hilton's a must-play, once again. Mm-hmm. He looked iffy for a couple of weeks, but he's a must-play.
He'll make or break, but you have to play him.
Yeah, I mean, but 10 catches, 171 yards, I mean, that's no joke. That's all Luck's got to look for. I mean, with Moncrief out the next couple of games, that's what they got. So we will move on from there. The next game was the Jets and the Steelers. Takeaways from this game, for me, the biggest one is that Matt Forte is now in a 100% time split with Bilal Powell. The days of the beginning of the season where Matt Forte was getting the bulk of the load are done. They trust Bilal Powell in passing situations. Listen, this Jets team, not very good.
No.
They're going to be in passing situations more often than not because they're going to be down in games because their passing defense is bad.
Yes, and the Steelers, pretty damn good.
Pretty darn good. Sammy Coates.
Okay, so I guess we can talk about this more later, but Sammy Coates seems like he's jumping into the what was his name? That's he's suspended for the year right now. Number 10 for him. Martavis Bryant. He's jumped into that role.
Yeah. Well, the thing about Coates is one big play for him is going to win you a week.
Yeah, he had a catch for 72 yards on the first...
But he's also going to drop...
Yeah, he will.
A wide open ball or two a game.
Kind of like a Ted Ginn. Kind of step above the Ted Ginn.
Yeah, I would completely agree with that. Another thing is play Le'Veon Bell if you got him.
Yeah.
He's pretty good at football.
Yes.
We'll move on from that game. Titans at Dolphins. DeMarco Murray, a top 5 back, in my opinion.
Oh, without a doubt. He
has been unbelievable. Ryan Tannehill, drop him.
Yes, I agree with that as well. And the other thing about Murray is, Titans, he's going to get the ball a ton. He's a workhorse right now. Yeah. You don't have to worry about touches.
He's going to open up the passing game. The receivers in Tennessee are a disappointment. That's for
They
sure.
really are.
Delaney Walker, I think now that he's back and healthy, is going to be, if you have him, you start him every week at tight end position.
Yes.
Unless you have like Gronk or Jordan Reed.
Well, then you put him at your flex.
Yes. We'll move on from that game. Eagles and Lions. Actually, I was really surprised that the Lions won this game.
So was I.
I think the Lions are not a very good team.
They're a weird team.
The
like,
Eagles
they'll hang with everyone, but
the Eagles have confused me so far, and I feel bad that Ray's not here to defend the Eagles. But I think he would tell you also that they disappointed in this game. The surprise for me for this game is Theo Riddick. A guy that I actually picked as my underperformer, but he showed he's the passing down back, but that might change now. They just signed Justin Forsett today.
I didn't see that.
Yep. So Justin Forsett's now on the Lions. I think he's going to slide into that third down back role. Possibly it could be a time split because Riddick and I don't know.
Riddick. The Lions have. They've said they don't want Riddick lining up every single down because he can't withstand it. He's too small. So they're going to split.
But he's not. If you look at him, he's a very average size NFL running back.
205, I think.
That's not. That's a
David
little
Johnson's
small.
like 235.
Well, yeah, but David
Le'Veon's
Johnson's a different animal. Those guys are different animals. You're looking at.
I feel like Riddick's more of like a slot receiver playing running back.
Yeah. The other takeaway from this game is, if you have Golden Tate right now, you can drop him.
It's really disappointing.
He's what I think. If there was a list of biggest disappointments, he's on it.
He's number one.
He's up there.
It's all between his ears too.
It is. Well,
he admitted it. He says
that the head coach or the offensive coordinator, Mr. Cooter, old JB Cooter. They keep. Wow, that was just lucky. Sorry, we're watching the Cubs and Giants game. If we break in with weird stuff, that's why. But previous to this game, Jim Bob Cooter says Golden Tate's going to have a big game.
He just hasn't. I still think he's going to have it, but it's like at this point,
why not?
He's on my team. No, I can't start him anymore.
For my thing, why not throw to Marvin Jones? He's proven that he's the top receiver in fantasy football. He's the top receiver in the NFL so far. Why not throw to him?
Yeah.
Why not?
Well, obviously he's number one, but Tate was productive as a number two before in that offense. Now he's just worthless.
This is true. Carson Wentz still very reliable.
He's solid. He's great in real life football. Fantasy wise, there's probably better options, but I would be excited if I was an Eagles fan and he was my quarterback.
Agree. He was projected at 17 points. He finished with 16.
That's
16 fantasy points isn't half bad. So we'll move on from that game. Patriots and Browns.
As expected.
I think Tom Brady went over expectations in this game.
A little under. I thought he'd throw for 900 yards and 15 touchdowns. But
of course. Another thing is that Chris Hogan should be on everyone's radar.
Yes.
The one thing we know about Tom Brady is that he's not going to discriminate against one receiver or another. He's going to get the ball to the open guy. They went out and they grabbed Chris Hogan for a reason in the offseason.
Yes, and people need to realize he is not a Danny Amendola and
Julian Edelman.
He's not that type of receiver. This guy's a big-bodied, fast receiver. He is more of a Brandon LaFell of the past. About 2 years ago when he had that big year.
Body size, I would agree with that.
Yes.
I would totally agree with that. He actually, like we said earlier, he left the game with a little bit banged up, but he's okay. He's good to go. Listen, you can start almost any New England Patriot any week. The one thing that I think is going to happen is and I've said it in previous podcasts, I think LeGarrette Blount his production from the first 4 weeks is going to be a bit of a mirage. Now that Tom Brady is back, it's going to switch from a run-first to a pass-first offense. and that actually benefits more of a James White or a Dion Lewis when he comes back from injury than it does a LeGarrette Blount. Obviously, if they're on the 1 yard line, it's going to be Blount that's going to get the first carry. Or
you can say Blunt.
Obviously
you can say Blunt.
Blunt. I always do that. I always say Blount. I don't know. Martell. I mean, the other thing from this game, you can own Gronkowski or Bennett, and you can start both of them every single week because it's going to be a Gronkowski and Hernandez type of year.
Yes. Well, hopefully not
without
entirely,
the killing of people.
But yes.
Without the killing of people. All right, we'll move on to the next game. Redskins and Ravens. Redskins.
Typical Ravens game. Low scoring. Keep it close.
Yep. I don't really have a ton of big takeaways from this game.
Terrence West is a lead back, and
he's the lead back right now. I think with the switch in offensive coordinator, I think it's going to be West and Dixon for most of the year. I think they're going to lean on the run. I don't really know though. I don't really know. I think Joe Flacco is a average quarterback. I think that Kirk Cousins is an average running or average quarterback.
Yeah, Cousins puts up some fantasy points though.
Every once
in
a while.
He's very average.
He's up and down. He's tough to trust as your starting quarterback. Move on from that game. Atlanta, Denver.
Shocker.
This was a crazy game, and I mean, once again, Tevin Coleman, who is not supposed to have a big game, finishes with a monster game. I mean,
both running backs played well.
Again, this is like the two tight end situation in New England. You can play both Atlanta running backs every single week. You can. Matt Ryan was supposed to go in and have a bad week. He didn't overperform, but I mean, he overperformed his projections. But coming in against Denver, you thought
passing in Denver to go for 267 yards. I mean, that's pretty impressive.
It's good. Julio Jones, another down game.
Yeah, but I mean, it's going up against the best secondary in football.
That's fair. That's fair. I don't know, but I mean, I think you expect Julio Jones to play well, even against the best defense in the league. Not to go for 4 fantasy points when he's projected at 19. I mean, that's rough.
But what? Matt Ryan found the open guy and didn't just throw at Julio because it's Julio, which is saying something for Matt Ryan.
Well, that's how you win games.
Yes.
I mean, that's how... At this point, they're not worried about putting up fantasy points for our benefit. They're worried about winning games, which they're doing right now.
Which is wrong.
Which is wrong. So wrong. Bengals at Cowboys.
No, I was surprised by this as well.
Another one that I was a little bit surprised at. Here's one thing that you can do. If you have Zeke Elliott, play him every single game. He is going to finish a top 5 running back in fantasy. The dude's ridiculous. Fast, powerful. He can catch it. He's ridiculous.
He's going to get shut down this week, but yes, he's good.
Come on. AJ Green, a little bit.
Yeah, I was surprised by that.
Disappointing. He was targeted a lot in the second half. Wasn't targeted a lot in the first.
I mean, overall, like we said
last week, I think the offense runs through him. Jeremy Hill left early with an injury. I don't think. I mean, Giovanni Bernard had a nice fantasy game, but I just don't think he's one of those guys that he's a really nice complementary back.
Yeah, he can't be the.
He can't do that. He's theoretic.
Yes.
So
that's exactly right.
But I mean, we'll move on in the next game projections. We'll get into these teams a little bit more. Chargers and Raiders. This was another bizarre game, and we'll get into. My main thing was that you can play Amari Cooper and Michael Crabtree every week. Matchup proof, 2 top 20 receivers every single week.
Derek Carr's proven to be a pretty legit quarterback.
Yep, you can play Derek Carr. He's going to be definitely a top 10 fantasy quarterback at the end of the year. Possibly could be a top 5. a listener question is coming up that has a little bit more about Crabtree and Cooper, so we'll save it.
Melvin Gordon, I believe, is a must start.
You think so?
I do. A pretty damn good year.
I think
the only running back left.
I think he's touchdown dependent. And he's prone to put the ball on the ground.
He is prone to fumble.
But the other thing I'm very concerned about Latavius Murray. I drafted him in our league.
Yeah. And
the Oakland running backs in Jalen Richard, and DeAndre Washington proves to be very capable without him.
It's a very similar to Philadelphia's backfield.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Next game, Bills and Rams.
Bills are playing well.
Went pretty according to script in this game. LaShawn McCoy's a must start right now. Ray and I both picked him as our overperformer. If you have LaShawn McCoy, stop questioning your backup running backs and just put them in every game. I don't know. Tyrod Taylor's just such an average quarterback. Like he keeps performing to his projections, but that's basically all he gives you. I mean,
if you need somebody on a bye week, he's not the worst thing in the world.
if you have Tyrod Taylor, expect him to be plus or minus 4 points of whatever his projection is. That's what you're gonna get from him.
He's safe. He doesn't turn the ball over.
For the most part, correct. We'll move on from that game. I'm not worried. Todd Gurley, even though he overperformed his projection by 1 point. Ray took him as his underperformer. The Bills' run defense is decent, so maybe Todd Gurley's rounding back into form here. Next game was the Giants and the Packers.
Huge shock in the way that game played out, I would say.
I actually did not get a chance to catch much of this game, so you're going to be the expert on this one.
I mean, the thing was, Packers secondary hasn't played well this year. Then they were depleted in this last game. Giants, one of the most talented receiving corps in the league. I mean, they didn't do squat. Eli played horrible.
I think the Packers' run defense is really good.
Packers' run defense.
They're a top 5 run defense right now.
They're number 1 and it's unbelievable.
By quite a bit.
Yes. I think only one team through 4 weeks had less yards ever in the NFL given up.
Do you think they could be had, though?
What's that?
The Packers' run defense? Do you think they could be had? Do you think a really good run...
we'll find out this week.
Have they faced anybody that's like
This week
superb?
Will be the test. Minnesota, but they took out AP. This week will be the test. They go up against the best offensive line in football, the Cowboys.
Yeah, that's true.
So this will be the game.
We'll see how Ezekiel Elliott does.
But Eli could have easily had 2 really long touchdown passes, and he missed both of them.
You know what? I'm disappointed in Eli so far this year. If it wasn't for a late touchdown for Odell Beckham, we're once again talking about a disappointing game for him. Victor Cruz has 0 touchdowns.
But I wouldn't blame
0 catches. Sterling Shepard has a down bad game.
I don't even think Victor Cruz had the ball go his way.
For a team that we were expecting to be a high-powered offense in the Giants, they've disappointed. Packers looked okay. Packers looked okay.
All right. They're a team that's
from the things that I saw. Obviously,
they're nowhere near their potential right now, but they're doing enough to win. Jordy Nelson had a pretty bad game in terms of.
Oh, he said himself that he basically called that game for him
his
pathetic.
Worst game ever.
Worst game ever.
I think he had like 13 targets, 4 catches, and I bet. What does that leave you with? I bet 8 balls out of those 9 he didn't catch hit his hands.
Balls and hands.
Balls and hands. Can't catch them.
So my question for you is this a thing to
be worried about? No.
Yeah. Are you worried about Jordy Nelson?
I'm not, because I think if anything, it makes him that much more dangerous now. I think he's out to prove himself. So
that's true. All right. Last game was Tampa Bay and Carolina, which there's not a whole lot to talk about here. Jameis Winston he's an average quarterback.
Mike Evans is really good. But...
Mike Evans is very good. He's going to be a top 10, maybe top 5 receiver at the end of the year. You're playing Mike Evans against anybody and everybody, and Carolina's looking to get healthy. I mean,
Greg Olsen is an animal.
Greg Olsen is an animal, but we'll get into Greg Olsen a little bit in our listener questions. So we are going to take a short break. We went through those pretty quickly, but I felt like we touched on every game, a decent amount. Hopefully you got a little bit of information that you can use from that. Maybe we went over things that were just absolutely, no-brainers. I don't really know. Let us know how we did. Get back to us. Let us know what you thought of that segment. And if, we need to change it around, maybe we will. But we're going to take a short break. And we're going to come back with some listener questions. We got a couple of them. So we'll get to those in just a minute. Hang right there with us. Thank you. What's up, everybody? We're back. So right now we're going to get into the listener questions. If we have a little bit of time at the end, we're going to get into our surprises from last week. We kind of went over a lot of them during the game recaps, but if we get to it, we'll do it.
We're going to do it.
We're going to do it. That's awkward and...
It's fine.
Unbelievable. Speaking of awkward.
Can we just do the questions?
We're going to get to the questions. So our first question is a grouping of questions, of course. Comes from a friend, Logan. Ray knows Logan well. He has basically got a question for every podcast we do. So we're going to get to him. Because he's got some good ones. Hi, Logan. So his first question is, when Doug Martin returns after their bye this week in Week 7... is he RB1 material and decent enough to replace LeGarrette Blount / Latavius Murray? So, my response to this is you could definitely replace Latavius Murray with him.
Without doubt.
Without a doubt. LeGarrette Blount's a different situation.
I believe
I need to wait and see how the Patriots' offense is going to run for another week or two before I make any decisions on him.
And the thing about so the thing with Martin is when he comes back, he's a feature back. He's going to get his touches. The thing about LeGarrette Blount is the Patriots change up their game plan every game. They do something drastically different. So you're going to run the risk where you might bench him and all of a sudden LeGarrette Blount gets 30 carries in a game. You might start him, and all of a sudden he gets 6 carries.
Right. So, well, my thing is, Doug Martin now has a clear path to a start. Even more of a starting rank with Charles Sims hurt.
Yes.
When he comes back, he is going to be the guy. The other two, Latavius Murray and LeGarrette Blount, not the guy. Blount more than Murray.
Yeah. I lean towards. If that was me, I'm starting Martin. And then looking and watching what happens with Blount.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what else he has, but I could see starting Doug Martin and somebody else on your bench over Blount and Latavius Murray.
Mm-hmm.
So that answers that one. We'll move on to the second question he had, which is, who has more value right now, Michael Crabtree or Amari Cooper? I kind of touched on this a little bit earlier, in the fact that this is one of those wide receiver duos that you could start both of them any and every week. They are both putting up fantasy points like crazy right now. They're both starting receivers in a fantasy lineup.
I think Cooper's by far the better talent. He's drawing more attention from defenses.
Agreed.
That allows
Crabtree to have some more openings.
But I mean, Cooper's the guy I would go with. I think there's more upside.
I mean, there's more upside with Cooper. He's the more
But
talented
you're still
receiver.
safe with Crabtree.
Yeah. I mean, that's honestly,
Oakland's going to be in a shootout every week.
If for some reason you have both of them on your team, you can
You
start both of them.
can try to get Derek
I don't
Carr.
have a problem with that. Yeah, go after Derek Carr, absolutely. All right, so the third part of the question, who's going to beat the Vikings so that the Packers can take the division?
The Packers are.
Logan is Logan is a Packer fan, so I'll let you take this.
The Packers are going to beat the Vikings. No, without a doubt, I think the Vikings are the best team in the NFL right now. But it's not, I mean, they aren't unbeatable.
No, I
mean, the Packers hung in there, and the Vikings opened up their home opener, a new stadium.
Listen, they're not going to score a defensive or a special team touchdown every single game.
They might.
Well, it's not probable, but I mean, I guess it could happen.
They're good.
I honestly, I don't know, man. I think the Vikings offense is beatable.
Oh,
I think the offense is beatable.
I think
They're going to have a game eventually where they only score 14 points because their offense it's just a mediocre offense, and the defense has an off game. I don't know who it's against. I don't really know.
They're not going undefeated, if that's what.
No, I highly doubt it. I mean, there's a very good chance that the Vikings win the division and the Packers are a wild card team.
Yeah, which I'm fine with.
I mean,
they did all right with that.
Sure. So, I don't really know who beats the Vikings, Logan. I can tell you it's not going to be the Bears. That's for sure. Maybe it's the Packers. I don't know. It's probably not going to be the Lions. It's going to have to be the Packers or somebody else outside of that division, in my opinion. So his fourth question and last question. He's got 3 quarterbacks. He wants to know which one to start. I don't know why you have 3 quarterbacks, but he has Carson Palmer, Marcus Mariota, Carson Wentz. And let me try and figure out the matchups here.
I'm going Palmer because he's going up against the Jets, who have an atrocious secondary this year.
Yeah, and the Eagles play the Redskins, which isn't a great.
Well, they're pretty bad.
I don't know. The Redskins' defense is surprisingly okay so far. Who do the Titans play?
Browns. They play the Browns.
Ooh, yeah. And Browns are bad.
My only thing is, I don't think Mariota is going to back up a performance like that with another
Palmer's
great
been really disappointing this year, though.
I'm going Palmer.
I'd have to go Palmer too, just because I don't. Mariota's talent around him is so limited, and I think they're going to lean on DeMarco Murray.
Yeah.
Wentz actually has a good matchup too. I just think he's young. He's coming off a loss. I think you got to go with the talent that's around Palmer, plus his experience. I agree with you there. I'll go with Andy Palmer. Carson Palmer. Our next question is from Andy, not Andy Palmer, just Andy. Logan, thanks for the questions as always. Hopefully, we helped you out a little bit there.
I love you.
So Andy has a couple of questions here. His first one is, should we be worried about DeAndre Hopkins? I think Hopkins is fine. He
doesn't have Hoyer to throw the ball anymore.
He did well last week against a Minnesota defense that is known for shutting down. I mean, he didn't overperform his expectations, but he matched them. I think that
he's not doing what he did last year.
No, he's not, and
he's still a must start.
I don't think Brock Osweiler's that good of a quarterback.
No, that's what I'm saying. Like, Hoyer would have been.
But you know what? I'll tell you what. If Lamar Miller struggled last week, he struggled the last couple of games. If he ever gets going, I think DeAndre Hopkins steps up even more. I'm more concerned about Lamar Miller than I am DeAndre Hopkins.
The thing about Texans, they finally have another receiver.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah.
So they have
Fuller he's a legitimate receiver.
Yeah,
he had a bad week
surprised by
last
that.
week, but when you're going up against the Minnesota defense, and what are you gonna? It's tough. But I'm not worried about DeAndre Hopkins. That's a guy that has, I mean, he's a top 10 talent in the league. I mean, if you have him, you're rolling him out there every week. If he disappoints, if you're really that down on him,
but who are you starting in his place?
Try and trade. In my opinion, try and trade him.
So
somebody will probably give you a decent return just based on the name. If you're really concerned about him, try and throw him out there for a trade. But I mean, I don't know. Ooh, wow. This is not looking good for the Cubs all of a sudden. So I mean, I don't mind rolling Hopkins out there every single week. I mean, he's a great talent. His second question is, he's in a league where you don't have to start a tight end. There's 3 positions where you could start a wide receiver, a tight end. His question is Greg Olsen an every week player?
Yes.
But
yes.
His receivers, DeAndre Hopkins, Larry Fitzgerald, Amari Cooper.
Oh wow, that's tough.
I know.
Wow.
And you know who he had grabbed as tight ends? He grabbed 2 tight ends, not knowing that he
didn't have a
tight end to start. He has Greg Olsen and Jordan Reed.
Wow. Is there a flex?
No, there's no flex.
So how's it go? Wide receiver, wide receiver, wide receiver, running back, running back?
Yeah. Listen, it's an 8-team league, so every team's fully stacked. But my thing is, it's really tough to sit any of those 3 receivers at this point in time.
It really is.
I mean, the only one that I would consider possibly sitting is Fitzgerald for one of those 2 tight ends. You can't sit Amari Cooper or DeAndre Hopkins.
No. Wow, that's brutal. That would lead to a lot of headaches. And if it's only 8-person team, you can't really leverage that great of a trade, probably.
Not a great trade.
I would be trying to trade with somebody running back heavy that's weak at wide receiver.
Yep. Yeah. Well, you know what the funny thing is? You could probably flip Jordan Reed for a decent running back.
Yeah. You might as well just put those names in a hat and pull out the first 3. And it's gonna fare well for you every week.
That's a really good point. Yeah.
Is it PPR? Because if it's not PPR, tight ends
I think it is. I think it is a PPR. I can't remember what he told me.
I mean, Hopkins has been a little slow, so put Reed in there for a week.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you could put Reed in there for a week. You could put Olsen in there for a week.
Yeah, look at your matchups. I mean, usually it'll tell you if the team's good at covering a tight end or not.
Yeah, absolutely. So, well, that is the end of that. So let's go through. That's the end of the questions. Thanks, Andy. And Logan for the questions. Let's go quickly through our surprises for the week. And we don't have to make this, overly long. My surprise on the good side for a quarterback was Sam Bradford, actually. 271 yards, 2 touchdowns, minus Stephon Diggs. He was a top 10 fantasy quarterback in our league. Surprising against a Texans defense that is very good against the pass. Top 10 quarterback without your number 1 receiver. Pretty impressive. Sam Bradford's my good surprise. My bad surprise, Ryan Tannehill, of course. 191 yards, no touchdowns, 2 interceptions. -5 fantasy points against a Tennessee defense that might be good, might be bad. We don't really know yet. They haven't overperformed. Ryan Tannehill, droppable in my opinion in fantasy leagues. Who are your quarterbacks, Brad?
Nobody really went over the top and surprised me. Underperformer, though, Eli Manning. Going in that game, I thought he was going to go for 500 yards, and he didn't do squat. I think he ended up with 5 fantasy points. And that's all I got to say about that.
Okay, fair enough. Running back for me, surprise on the good side was Tevin Coleman.
I agree.
Didn't get a lot of touches in the running game, 6 for 31, but 4 catches, 131 yards, and a touchdown. I mean,
and wasn't expected to even play, right? Or
limited
role?
Limited role. Yeah, he had 26 fantasy points. He finished third in our league. He finished, top 5 in most leagues. And, this is, once again, one of those guys that, even with Devonta Freeman also playing well, you can play both of them.
Yes.
That's how it is. My bad surprise was Lamar Miller. 8 carries, 20 yards, 1 catch for 4 yards. I know that they played against Minnesota, but 3 fantasy points. He finished in between the 40 and 50 running back range for most fantasy leagues. Listen, when you're the bell cow, you're the workhorse for a team. I don't care if you're playing Minnesota or not. You gotta have more than 3 fantasy points. 8 carries for 20 yards. They were behind early in this game, so I understand the flow of the passing game, but I thought Lamar Miller would be involved in the passing game. And just wasn't there. Disappointing. So
my disappointment was a guy who was supposed to be really hot off the waiver wire and supposed to make an impact. A lot of people were saying start him. Wendell Smallwood for Philly. I don't even think he tasted the field. I don't think he touched the field at all. Thank you, Zoe. Thank you.
Yeah, she's upset.
Not happy with the Smallwood.
Yeah. No big wood. Mostly small.
Smallwood. All small.
My surprise on the receiver end, we talked about him a little bit earlier, Sammy Coates. 6 catches, 139 yards, 2 touchdowns, 31 fantasy points. Finished second in our league against the Jets. Obviously Antonio Brown was the main target of their defense. They didn't really stop him much either. Coates is proving that speed kills. He's going to drop some balls every once in a while. But you know what? Balls. If he can catch 6 balls for 139 balls, 2 touchdowns,
balls.
I mean, that's a very legit fantasy option. My bad surprise, bad, Jarvis Landry, going against, kind of matches up with my bad call of Ryan Tannehill, or bad surprise. 3 catches, 28 yards, one carry for 2 yards, 5 fantasy points. Finish outside of the top 50. This is that guy that was supposed to be a top 15 receiver week in, week out. I was very, very surprised that he underperformed by that much. Jarvis Landry was my bad surprise.
So my Adam Thielen was my surprise.
Sure.
What do you got? 7 for $130 and a touchdown. He's supposed to be a blocking wide receiver. It's a pretty good stat line. Underperformer, AJ Green.
Yeah.
I mean, the Cowboys' defense, is their secondary anything special? And they shut them down.
Absolutely. So, moving on, tight end. Obviously, my good surprise, Martellus Bennett. 6 catches, 67 yards, 3 touchdowns. Obviously, 2 of those 3 touchdowns came from within 10 yards. But, that shows that Brady's looking for him in the red zone. That's always a good thing. 30 fantasy points. He finished first in pretty much every league. Bad surprise was Kyle Rudolph. 2 catches, 15 yards, 3 fantasy points. 25th in our league, tight end. For a guy that had caught touchdown passes in 3 straight games, looked like he had a serious connection in a game where the running backs didn't do much, and it was a lot of passing game from Bradford, as he was my good surprise for a quarterback. I was really surprised that Rudolph wasn't more involved. I don't think this is a cry for help. I don't think you should be dropping Kyle Rudolph. I still think he's a very good tight end, especially if he can stay healthy. But I was surprised in a game against the Texans where it was as high scoring as it was that he didn't get a little bit more involved. So
my good surprise, was San Diego Chargers tight end duo. A lot of people had been picking up Hunter Henry as long as Antonio Gates was hurt. Well, Gates played, Henry played. They both produced. They both had a touchdown. And I'll agree with you with Kyle Rudolph.
Sure.
But I still believe he's a tight end 1.
Sure. All right, well, that's going to do it for our first podcast of the night. We want to thank our music from Static Signal. You can find them on iTunes and Spotify. Their album is Transient. Once again, you can follow us on Twitter. You can follow me individually at GMLVA15.
You can send me a postcard.
You can send a postcard. You can follow Ray at First and 10 Ray, number 1, number 10, all together. First and 10 Ray. You can follow the podcast at First and 10 Podcast, all together. Like us on Facebook. Go to the search bar. Put in at First and 10 Podcast, all one word. Give us the thumbs up. We would appreciate it. If you like news, if you like injury reports, that's where to go to do it, because that is usually my first spot where I go to post it. And then you can email us if you want to. firstand10podcast@gmail.com. We will be right back. We're going to go on to our next podcast, second of the night, which is our projections podcast.
It's big. It's a big deal.
Bold and big. Just how we like it. Right, Brad?
Yes, there's no Wendell Smallwood talk in the next podcast.
I'll
tell you that much.
Only Wendell Bigwood. So much Wendell Bigwood. So we'll be right back. Jump over. Join us for the projections podcast. You know you want to.
Woo!
And we'll be right back with that one. Love you.